الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Okay, as the brother mentioned, my talk this morning, inshallah ta'ala, is on the subject of manhaj, what we call manhaj. And as you will be aware that in the current times, in contemporary times, there's a great deal of speech concerning the issues of manhaj, or the issues of methodology. And before I begin reading from some of the statements and some of the rulings from the noble Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan and from his book on this subject, I'd like to give just a basic introduction or some perspective or some background with respect to why we have in the current time so much confusion and so much deviation away from the issues of methodology, the issues of manhaj that the Salaf were united upon. The Salaf of this ummah were united upon. So first of all, when we speak of manhaj, then the word manhaj itself means a way or a methodology or a course of action that is to be followed in any given situation. So when we look at the manhaj of ahlus-sunnah wal jama'aah, the manhaj of the Salaf al-Salih, then we find that in all of the different aspects of Islam or the different aspects of the sunnah, that they have a specific methodology which they follow. So for example, when we look at the subject of asma wa sifat, the subject of Allah's names and Allah's attributes and Allah's actions, how do we understand them? How do we believe in them? How do we speak about Allah? Then with respect to this subject, we find that there's a specific methodology that ahlus-sunnah wal jama'ah are upon, and which can be found within their books from the earliest times to the contemporary times. So for example, some of the issues are that we only affirm for Allah what He affirmed for Himself of names and attributes, and we negate from Allah whatever He negated from Himself. And whenever we come across a name or an attribute or an action in the book of the Sunnah, we affirm it, we believe in it, we accept it, we make taslim, we submit to it, without making ta'til, negating it, or tahrif, distorting it, or takyif, meaning specifying how it is, or tamthil, resembling it or likening it to what is found in the creation. So this, what you've heard here is like the basic, some aspects of the methodology of ahlus-sunnah wal jama'ah with respect to understanding the topic of asma wa sifat. Likewise in the issue of qadr, the issue of the divine pre-decree, al-qada wal-qadr, we find that again ahlus-sunnah wal jama'ah have a specific methodology, which again is derived from the book and the sunnah, with respect to how do we speak about and how do we understand and how do we believe in al-qadr. So for example, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had knowledge of every single thing before it occurred, and then He wrote that down in the preserved tablet, and then we believe in His will, that whatever He wills occurs, whatever He does not will does not occur, and that the will of the humans follows on from Allah's will, but at the same time every human, every person, individual has his will to choose between the right and between the wrong, because Allah sent messengers in the books. So we affirm the will for Allah and the will for the creation, and also we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who creates everything, and He creates the actions of the servants. However, the servants themselves have the freedom to choose their actions. So Allah is the creator of the actions, and the servants are responsible because they choose their actions. So this is what is derived from the book and the sunnah, and this is the manhaj, or the methodology of ahlus-sunnah, with respect to the affairs of qadr. And likewise with tafsir, how do we make tafsir of the book and the sunnah? How do we explain the book and the sunnah? Again, we find that there's a specific methodology, which again, itself is derived from the book and the sunnah. That we explain the Quran with the Quran. Then we explain it with the sunnah. Then we explain it with the things of the Sahaba. And then after that we resort to the issues of language and so on and so forth. So there's a specific methodology that ahlus-sunnah wal jama'aah are upon. Likewise, in the issues, some of the practical issues. For example, how do we behave towards the rulers when we find that they are sinful and oppressive and tyrannical? How do we behave? So in the sunnah we find that there's a specific manhaj that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has outlined, that we have patience. Even if they beat our backs and take our wealth, then we have patience. And we have patience up until we meet the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the hawd. That with respect to all the fitan, as time goes on and the fitan increase, then the believer should have patience up until he meets the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the hawd. So we find that in the sunnah there are guidelines and there is information as to how we should behave in the likes of these situations. Likewise, for example, how do we enjoin the good and forbid the evil? How do we behave as an ummah when the ummah is weak and oppressed and the iman is deficient? So all of these affairs are affairs of manhaj, which relate to how we conduct the da'wah, how do we reform the people, how do we rectify the condition of the people, of the society, or the land, how do we call to Allah, where do we begin, what are the priorities, and so on and so forth. All of these things collectively come under the subject or the understanding of the manhaj of ahlus-sunnah wal jama'ah, or the way or the methodology of ahlus-sunnah wal jama'ah. So these affairs are affairs which can be found in the books of the aqeedah of the salaf. All the early books of the aqeedah of the salaf, from the 2nd century onwards until the 4th century, and after that time. And the brother yesterday, Abu Khadija hafidhahullah, he mentioned to you a list of prominent names from the first few generations, and then from each subsequent generation thereafter, people who were known to be imams of the sunnah, and many of whom were known to have authored in the book or on the subject of aqeedah and manhaj. So this is how the affair was, and this is how the situation was up until recent times, when due to the emergence of certain groups and certain organizations and certain individuals, these aspects of methodology, and we're speaking specifically here now, not with respect to asma wa sifat or qadr, or how to do tafsir, we're speaking specifically about the affairs of da'wah, the affairs of calling to Allah, the affairs of rectifying the Muslim society, the affairs of correcting the rulers, the affairs of how do we work so as to earn Allah's pleasure and so as to gain victory for the Muslim ummah. These types of affairs, in these types of affairs, certain individuals and certain groups and certain organizations emerged in the past century. And these people innovated certain ideas, and they innovated certain methodologies that were built around these ideas, as a result of which they opposed the sunnah. And because these people had wealth and position and ability, and they had at their means of disposal all sorts of means of propagation and spreading their call, then they spread a lot of corruption and deviation and misguidance in the affairs of manhaj, in the affairs of methodology that relate to these issues which I mentioned earlier. So from amongst these groups and from amongst these individuals, just by way of summary, then the most prominent group who's responsible is the group called Ikhwaanul-Muslimeen. Ikhwaanul-Muslimeen, the Muslim Brotherhood. And this group began in Egypt in the late 1929 specifically,